Greetings, this is Corey S. with the Bull City Bulletin, and I'm joined with Eric B. here on this Wednesday, July 16th, 2014. Unfortunately, we have been having some technical difficulties. We just lost about 30 minutes of information the prior broadcast. We were getting to a really good point, and we had technical difficulties. Interesting, because today's topic was actually the police surveillance state and the ubiquity of cameras and other surveillance devices in our everyday life, and as well as how the police state has been growing at an exponential rate, especially here in Durham, North Carolina, and they are more and more intruding into our lives. So I want to kind of recap what we had talked about before we get into anything new. I first of all wanted to point out the heinous trend that we see here in Durham, North Carolina of police overreach, police brutality, police corruption, city council corruption, and also the general awakening that we see in the public to the corruption that I'm speaking about. And so I'm going to share my screen here and give you just a synopsis of the recent news that I have been tracking here in the area. Okay, this came out today, actually, July 16th, and you notice the innocuous headline, "One person hurt in Durham officer-involved shooting." Well, what does involved mean? If you read the article, basically what happened was a police officer was allegedly called out to an apartment complex where a gentleman was creating a, quote, disturbance with a gun. This could be as vague as a neighbor seeing him with a gun and calling the police enforcers, which actually resulted, seems to have happened and resulted in this man being shot by the officers. So that's what they mean when they say involved. He was involved because he pulled out his gun because he saw the silhouette of a man standing with what seemed to be a rifle and shot him. And now he's in critical condition and currently in the hospital. Okay, that's one example. We also have almost absurdly funny admitting of a police officer in court that they faked 911 calls and claimed to have had a 911 call in order to knock on doors and basically intrude into people's homes. You know, we've seen the widespread use of, quote, no-knock raids with various federalized SWAT teams, you know, all across America, but this is coming out in court by an officer here in Durham, North Carolina. Of course, Jose Lopez, the chief of police, was quick to point out that this is not official policy, yet his police officers are using these tactics to essentially violate people's rights. And further, I had a Salon article up, but there have been, you know, report after report, both in the mainstream media as well as just throughout the community, that the Durham City police officers are racially biased. And this article came out actually back in May, where various citizens were coming to protest at the city council meeting, claiming that they were either victims of or new victims of the Durham City Police and their racial profiling. And you know, we also know from earlier reporting that they have quotas. You know, quotas much the same as a salesperson might have quotas to essentially violate people's rights and get them into court so that they can take their money. Okay, so this is essentially the trend that we wanted to talk about today, and the growth of the police state, the growth of the surveillance state, and where it's all going and what it all means. So I want to hand it over to Eric so he can kind of recap what he said in our last you know, 30 minutes or so, and you know, what he thinks about where all this is going.
Yeah, I mean, we're definitely under a state of war. And what is the war? The war is conformity to the state or not. Either you're with us or against us. If you're against us, they're going to make it extremely difficult to be a free person. I've done some investigation. I lost a lot of screens, but if you go into like private security or high-tech security firms, they're supporting all the police departments. They're definitely supporting our Durham Police Department. What type of high-tech gadgets can access your phone, access your laptop, can hear what you're doing in your offices, a complete virtual person, a virtual identity of what you're doing, everything you're doing in real time. Can anyone actually tell me when they cannot be surveilled? No, you can be surveilled all the time in this virtual world, and everyone's accepting it. And then if you go into Homeland Security, they openly admit that the only solution to this immigration problem or basic problem of terrorism is a biometric identity. So what does this entail? What does the future entail? The future entails you're basically going to have your own black box. You're going to have your own transponder, and you're going to go through virtual checkpoints all the time. They're going to listen to what you're saying, make sure you're not speaking about anything that's not conforming to the state. If you look up in headlines, open headlines, they're figuring out how to use Wi-Fi biometric systems to change your hormones. So you get the future idea of like THX 1138, where they're basically reading your emotions, reading your biochemistry, your serotonin levels, so they know if you're getting antsy. Maybe you'll get a call through your cell phone and ask, "Are you doing okay, Eric? Everything all right? Your heartbeat is a little faster. You're sweating. Your biochemistry is off." So this is the world we're going to be going to, because this is the only world that could provide safety for the state, for really the psychopaths that are in power. That's the only way that their paranoia is ever going to be satisfied. So we're absolutely moving into this virtual state. I had a screen showing Homeland Security investing into our local neighborhood here at the NCCU, which is a college in Durham Central, and they're investing $260 million grant to help NC State produce people to work for the homeland in areas of faith-based. They mentioned faith-based, so I'm assuming churches, mosques, synagogues, education, ethics, and human rights. And every time I do go into research the state, they're very much into ethics, and probably so, because that's the basics of any type of social engineering. You want to make sure you capture the ethics, you want to capture the human rights. There's the Homeland Security. So basically, part of the Ponzi scheme with economics and creating this bubble of derivatives and virtual create money out of nowhere was basically to buy off everybody and to set up the infrastructure of this police state, which could be activated at any moment right now.
Well, actually, I believe one of the top NSA whistleblowers, I think it was William Binney, he said that what they have now, it could be a turnkey totalitarian state.
Absolutely.
I mean, most of the infrastructure has already been built. And certainly people want to protect themselves as much as possible, but we really need to just come to the realization that we're past that. We're past the point where you can, work within the system to, maintain some anonymity. I mean, they took your blood when you were born, they took your footprint, they took your fingerprints, and it didn't even matter if they didn't take those things, because they have advanced anatomy analysis systems which can map the unique signature of your face and your eyeballs, and to essentially identify you within this electronic surveillance grid. And they have it's been publicly known since the Edward Snowden documents, and actually corroborated by them, that they have this ability to capture pictures in real time from various surveillance cameras that may not even be government owned. They may be privately owned. And then, further to your point about the biometrics and the chips and the systems, we don't wait for an injection or someone to try to force you to have an injection, because they won't even necessarily need to do that. We're already voluntarily complying with the system by purchasing the latest and greatest cell phones, which are increasingly mapped to an singular online identity. Notice how you have to log in with your Google account or your Facebook account or your Twitter account, and they give you a few options, so you still feel like you have some semblance of choice, but really they are matching all of these different online identities to create one holistic identity to where you can no longer have any anonymity online. Notice how they're implementing biometrics in the actual computers, in the actual infrastructure, like cars, and eventually maybe bicycles, getting on the internet. They want to know who you are. They want to know where you are, and it's not to keep you safe. It was actually created. A lot of this infrastructure was built and brought in, not just technologically, but on a legal basis after 9/11. And of course, we all know 9/11 was the excuse, the impetus, and the continued justification for this crazy panopticonic system. And just a moment, I talked about this before. What is a panopticon? It is actually an institutional design that was created by a philosopher and social theorist, Jeremy Bentham, to create the illusion that you were always being watched at any given moment, even though that may not have actually been the case. And that's what they have already built. They've already created it. All the computers have webcams and microphones. Your cell phone. Anywhere you go in a public building, private buildings, even now have surveillance cameras that they may have even voluntarily created, but since the internet was invented by the military, the NSA and other agencies and contractors have hijacked the ability to tap into that. So they have situational awareness in 3 dimensions wherever there's a webcam or a camera or a microphone attached to the internet. I mean, that's just a fact.
Yeah, another analogy is the Batman movie with the radar system and the Wi-Fi system. I thought that.
Right.
Yeah, you brought up that analogy.
Right.
But go ahead.
Yeah, Batman was a classic example of predictive programming by the Hollywood elite, who inserted that, what you might call a moral question to get people ready to have it answered. And what was the answer? Yeah, we'll use it just this one time, for justice. For justice. And that's what I really think that's what's gone on with the Edward Snowden thing. You notice how he used to work for the agencies. He used to work for the NSA. He came out. I appreciate all the information that's been released. I'd rather that it be released than not, because now at least people know about it. But you notice nothing has changed. The establishment has not actually done anything to curb this. It's only accelerated, and I think that they, are just letting us know that it's set up, and then once the false flag that is no doubt being planned actually manifests, if it manifests, hope it doesn't,
going to manifest false flag or organic.
Right. Then you'll have the psychological inertia of people to persecute those of us who are opposed to such a system, after that takes place.
Yeah, I mean it's all coming to fruition. I am in absolute awe of this the situation we're in. I mean nothing is boring. I mean we're literally it's what's coming to the open is a complete global technocratic takeover of the human species, and it's like it's a Skinner box, because once people start acting as if people can hear your thoughts, you're going to change your thoughts. That's the last bit of privacy we have, is our own thoughts on how we view the world. I mean, that's where unalienable rights come from, and spirit and individuality and sovereignty. So once everyone starts, generation grows into the system, which it's already started, knowing that nothing's private, the influence the state has to mold consent, mold ideologies, mold narrative is just, I mean, it's an extreme level. It's at like THX 1138 level, and it's just coming out all in the open now.
Right.
I mean, they don't even hide it. The Department of Justice says, yes, we're investing hundreds of millions of dollars for propaganda. We're sending out sock puppets to infiltrate liberty movements. We're using Facebook and Twitter to gather behavioral analysis. So
Facebook is manipulating our emotions through newsfeed algorithms. It's incredible social conditioning.
It's incredible. There's mainstream media is one of the biggest frauds I've ever seen in my entire life. The education system, one of the most gigantic frauds. The entertainment system, I mean, lo and behold, once everyone realizes what sports entertainment and movie entertainment and all this crap was really used for, it wasn't used for entertainment. It was to keep you redirected from the real reason.
Detached from the real world.
Detached from the real world, and creating a whole another matrix world. Right. And it's just coming from all sides. Economic stressors, relationship stressors. I mean, mental illness is off the scale. Drug addiction's off the scale. The prison system's off the scale. We see the police incredible. It's like they're acting like they're at war with their own countrymen.
Well, they themselves have been conditioned. They've been conditioned. They are following a software program that's literally been downloaded into their brain, following entertainment archetypes and different predictive programming that they are not in the least bit conscious of. And we've kind of discussed this in past broadcasts, but I can't get over this document, which is the North Carolina Information Sharing and Analysis Center. I mean, this is what really took place after 9/11 here in America, was the establishment of these different agencies which fuse data, disparate groups of data collected from these various surveillance apparatuses, and basically masters it for the various agencies, and then they feed it in whatever way they feel necessary to the different corporations that have been established to quote unquote keep us safe. But even the Supreme Court has stated that the city government has no duty to protect the citizen. They don't. And people think that having a microphone on their computer, having a webcam on their phone is no big deal. They say, well, I'm not doing anything wrong, so what have I got to be worried about? Okay, do you really want to live in a country where the North Carolina Highway Patrol is communicating with the alcohol law enforcement and the TSA and the North Carolina Justice Academy, Department of Homeland Security, all of these agencies, even colleges and other other innocuous
corporations? Yeah, I mean it's
Raleigh Police Department, County Sheriff's Department, and then you have Obama over here saying basically talking, his administration to the local police departments, saying don't let on to your citizens that we're actually feeding this information to you. And this is happening in Durham. This is happening in Raleigh. This is happening in the Triangle.
Absolutely. What dynamic it is? It's like almost like a big brother in real life. A big brother basically watching over you in junior high, and he's got all his friends watching you, make sure you're safe, and you don't have no idea what's going on. And the big brother's empathy is out of protection. It's almost like what was that? The Truman Show.
Right.
Everything is managed. Everything is centralized through AI, all to protect you. So, does anybody want to live like this? I mean, who would want to live like this? Cowards? People who are just, don't want to think for themselves, don't want to be individual, don't want to be creative. So that's the system is supporting the cowards. That's why we have so many anonymous availability to tell on your neighbor, CPS, Homeland Security. I mean, it's on and on and on. It is just the absolute destruction of the Bill of Rights. It has thrown us back 1,000+ years in trying to attain any individual sovereignty. It's atrocious. I mean, freedom of speech, really? I mean, protected information. I mean, really, no warrants. I mean, it's all just being railroaded under the golden goose of terrorism. It's incredible stuff. Immigration, immigrants. It's just this golden goose of just endless terror and immigration, and there is nothing. The only thing that's going to stop it, in their minds, is having a completely transparent society under surveillance, monitored, behavioral monitor, under artificial intelligence that will inform the local Gestapo to go and basically, behaviorally screen you and determine if you need to be re-educated, or maybe you're just a terrorist, and we'll put you in some torture center.
Yeah, we need to also emphasize to listeners that this is all engineered. This doesn't all happen by accident. This is a coordinated force. People think that, the only people who do anything bad in government are just inept. No, they're incredibly intelligent. They're incredibly sophisticated, sophisticated enough to get you to believe that they're inept. And
right, yeah.
They run frauds all day long. All day they create cons. They think of new ways to make cons. They think of new ways to dumb you down and to get you to comply as well as buy into your own compliance. When I talk to Randy Stroud, who I highly regard as a sovereign individual, he mentioned, when going down the rabbit hole, a comic that he read that said, I love my freedom and I have all the licenses to prove it. And it really starts with the initial lie that we are free and we are sovereign here in America and that we live in a free country, because we don't. If you don't get a driver's license and you're a natural born citizen, that could eventually land you in jail. And when you go to jail, absolutely, you get processed, they take your handprint, they put you into a database, they issue a bond that's attached to your soul, and they make money off of you. That is the system that we have, and that's why we have 360-some million people in this country, but we have more prisoners than any other country on earth, including ones that have triple the population. So,
I mean, let me put it in another perspective. I mean, there's over 70 million people needing food stamps to survive. If you cut off those food stamps, everyone's going to be starving in a week. I mean, what do you think is going to happen in your neighborhood? So absolutely all this is planned. And who would plan this type of stuff? my only conclusion is psychopaths, and the evidence of psychopathy running our world, engineering our world, is so evident, so in my face all the time. It's incredible. Because psychopathy basically doesn't have the empathy for human beings. It's just basically survival of the fittest, and they just don't have that component in them. And you see that throughout the entire system, and it's been going on for so long. It's affected individual people. It's infected family dynamics. I cannot think of any other better word than purgatory for this planet. I mean, it's getting darker and darker. We're having this conversation, and we're trying to generate some intelligence. We're trying to generate the perspective of what's really going on. But how long do you think that's going on now that they've just decided they have the internet kill switch? Basically, they're lining all their ducks in a row. They've done all the legal work for it. They've done the infrastructure. They've mind controlled the population. So unfortunately, something's going to pop.
Don't you think that we're really in the midst of a melange of false flags, a swath of different factors which seem to be coalescing? A lot of people talked a lot about 2012 and whether that would be the end of the world, and I do think it was the end of a cycle, but we're seeing events accelerate and reach this critical mass, what you might call novelty. You have factors like the preeminence of the US dollar as a world reserve currency coming into question. You've got the BRICS Bank, development bank, that's starting to challenge the supremacy of the World Bank and the IMF. You've got the naked short selling of gold, the emptying of the London gold vaults, and all of this monetary wealth being transferred, even though it may be in the name of a certain country, without anybody's accountability. I mean, the Federal Reserve is established here, has been for more than 100 years, and creates, our entire money system, which is owned by a private family, and that's really what people have to recognize if we're ever going to address the local issues as it manifests down to our level. And it is an artificial intelligence in the sense that it's trying to overlay with our consciousness, our ability to be aware, and it is a battle, a crisis of awareness. I mean, that's what I realize.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's why I've kind of picked fluoride as one of my main issues to battle, because I think it inhibits people's ability to connect dots and to create, a rational perspective about the world. And so consequently, you end up with a situation where people are too dumb to even know that they're being dumbed down. And so how do you even begin to communicate with them, and inspire some sort of action if they can't even agree that there's a problem? I mean, it's an incredible psychological obstacle that we have. And that's really what we're trying to do with this broadcast, is just talk, because people's ability to talk and express themselves from the soul has literally been decapitated.
That's right. You're right. Yeah. I mean, well said. Yeah, the fluoride. We can't even get GMOs. We can't get them identified. They're changing the genetic code without any thinking of any consequence. It's just science running wild. But yeah, it's a strong delusion. What I think we're doing is why I think our broadcast is so good is because we are really just talking. I mean, it's some of it's structured and most of it's just talking off the hip. But we need to get people talking off the hip. People just got to talk and share experiences. And I think what's happening right now is what we're seeing is, in one sense, the AI state is is making their frontal assault. Everyone's seeing it now, and in that time, there's so many liberty movements going on that I think as we are talking, they go to another channel, and someone else is talking about the same thing. We're all really talking about the same thing. We're talking about getting out of bondage, getting out of slavery, worried about our future, our children's future. I want people to be free. I don't want to be going into this very dark Gestapo world. So yeah, I mean, what are some solutions? Don't consume fluoride. Don't consume fast food. Don't consume anything GMO, organic. Eat as best you can. Exercise, and you've got to use your mind. You've got to start thinking that everything is a con. Everything has been pre-engineered. I urge everyone, look at the Rockefellers, Carnegies, back in the earliest 20th century, the League of Nations, Carol Quigley's book. There's just so much information that can help you to realize that, yes, they did spend the time and the resources setting up this infrastructure to get the totalitarian world that they're about to embrace now. So if people can think, that's a huge thing, because when you start digging deeper into this thing, you realize there's some spirit thing going on. We're more than just flesh and blood. There's something eternal, even if it's you're creating prodigy for your children. There's been some battle going on through eons that we are experiencing now. That's always been. There are men who want to control their men, and then there are men who want everyone to be free. And we know deep down inside that the people who want to be free, we have huge abundance, we have energy, we have intelligence and creativity, so that everyone can have enough to survive and be free and do what they want.
Right, and that's very striking thing to say, and it reminds me of what I witnessed when I watched Dawood Bey's video, because it is in a sense a spiritual war, and one has to declare their sovereignty to themselves first before they can ever assert that when you come into contact with what I would call a soulless person. You know, in a sense, a program, like a hologram almost. Like when these police officers and these CPS workers come to the door, they are biological robots.
Yeah,
they
you're right.
Absolutely. They're following something, a procedure, a sequential set of thoughts that have been implanted into their body, and they don't know how to actually receive and interpret their own impulses and translate that into, you know, organic communication.
Wow, that's very good, Corey. That is, you hit it right there on the head. That's actually probably the most frightening thing to think of. Yeah, the spirit of good and evil is affecting people in real time with real issues. It's affecting me on a daily basis. And it depends on my choices and my ability to think if I'm free or not.
Well, you know, we do live in a free will universe, and so you have to understand the nature of the physics of it. You know, for each action, there's an equal and opposite reaction. So if someone comes to your door and they start asking you questions, why don't you turn it on them? They're equal. We're supposed to be equal here, so you can ask them questions, and then you're going to have an opposite reaction. Now, a lot of people would be afraid of that. What keeps them from doing that is the fear, which is also an illusion of, you know, bodily harm or murder or destruction. Well, you know,
which is true.
It's true.
That points to the. I think that points to the hyperactivity with the police, because I think the police are so entrenched in the program that when people start agitating them, hey, you're not in a program, you're a human, they get they get super aroused and super aggressive, and I think that's a lot of the mental illness and pathology that's happening with the military state.
Right, and just I think people need to realize that a question is 10 times more powerful than a statement. If you go to one of my favorite anti-fluoride videos, I went to one of the local water boards in Chapel Hill, OWASA, Orange Water and Sewer Authority, and I just wanted to pose a simple question to get their reaction. I simply waited for the response. The question was, do you have the authority to medicate the water supply? And this requires some, intellectual
it's not in
processing.
My programming.
And it was not in his programming, and he said that's a rhetorical question. We don't have to answer that. Of course, it's not a rhetorical question. And you do have to answer that. You are accountable to us, and the fact that I had challenged that, I could tell. I mean, the chemistry in the room changed when I simply asked that question. So when you come up against a police state event, you get pulled over for a tail light, and they've got their lights and their sirens on. Ask them what the emergency is. That could be a solution. Ask them what the emergency is and put the ball in their court. Now, they may pull you out and beat you with a billy club. But who's right? Who's right?
Yeah. I know what you're saying. And, maybe we might have to spend a few hours on a program just, dissecting how to deal with the police state, how to dealing with the legal system. And allowing people to make choices for themselves on how they want to, how they want to deal with it.
People let things happen to them. They just feel like they're.
They trust the government.
Well, yeah, sure.
Yeah, they trust the government. But yeah, I mean, they're raising taxes everywhere. I mean, this climate change.
Yeah. I want to mention. I got this in my water bill today. Citizens newsletter. The Durham City Council approved the fiscal year 2014-2015 budget on June 16th, which includes a 2.37 cent property tax increase. 2.37 cent property tax increase. The budget creates a new tax rate of 59.12 cents per $100 of assessed value. Assessed value for voter-approved debt, public safety and parks maintenance, solid waste fleet capital needs. Of course, they're paying for the service, the lovely service that they bring us. The police officers who shoot us when we're just standing with a gun in our own home, or we have to pay for the fluoride that they add to the water against our consent, or all of the the other unconstitutional expenditures. Thank you, Durham City Council, for approving that budget. I really appreciate that.
Yeah, it's some really incredible stuff. I never hear anything good from any of our leaders. I never hear anything good from my corporate executives. I see my fellow coworkers more demoralized. I see all the workers, any type of blue collar workers. Everyone is demoralized.
What really bugs me is the trend of abusing the actual taxpayers. It'd be one thing if I paid taxes and actually got a worthwhile service from it. But what do I pay for that I actually want? I mean, you take the income tax and you look at the Grace Commission. We don't even pay for any services with the income tax. Yeah. Although our collateral, us as collateral allows the military-industrial complex to hire joystick operators in Nevada who are dropping bombs on children.
We've basically been coerced to set up this gigantic police state to basically wage war on the people to find out whose side you're on.
Yeah, but now what we're going to have is this massive fight over the gigantic welfare system which has been created, and this really was a striking article to me. Talking about the quote-unquote undocumented children, unaccompanied children
Yeah, and no,
are
no
now
one's ever
trying to
gonna.
get in-state tuition. Listen, my fiance did not even get in-state tuition, and she lives in Virginia. Okay, that's going to put, hypothetically her in debt for many, many years to come. But some undocumented, illegal person, I don't agree that I don't even want to be a legal person in this country, but I didn't have a choice. I was born into it. But
Yeah.
if I am, I'm offended that they would give in-state tuition to someone who hasn't even gone through the correct legal process to be in-state.
Yeah, I mean it's incredible. It's a complicated issue, and the psychopaths use empathy against us. I mean, I haven't even heard any of the mainstream media news talking about how the CIA has totally destabilized Mexico and Central America.
Like Guatemala. I mean,
right.
A lot of them in Guatemala and in our CIA completely destabilized their country and put in a puppet.
I mean, and it is a nightmare down there. So the whole place is in chaos. Was that all done to keep it destabilized? So they have their event now with this incredible immigration. Absolutely. I mean, Jesus, what do you? I mean, it's the lifeboat scenario. I mean, you literally you got 10 people in a lifeboat. You can't take any more. And
yeah, we don't even pay for the veterans. We don't pay.
Yeah, it's incredible. Yeah, I mean, no one ever talks. Listen, one thing I never see with mainstream media is the poor. I gotta tell you, I'm in the front lines. The poor are just absolutely destitute. They're in and out of prison. They can't afford nutrition. They can't afford housing, and then they're getting destroyed with this whole doublespeak of the drug war. All these pharmaceutical companies creating drugs so that they're so cheap, and they're just spread everywhere. Opium now is at the highest level. So our own poor, we don't even take care of our own poor. We don't even take care of our own mentally ill. We imprison them.
No, we ask them to pay $45 a year in license fees to pay.
And we charge them $160 for not wearing a seatbelt. Listen, on the immigration front, I think we're running out of time now, but it's a very complicated issue because the destabilization of Central America, the Democrats are using empathy. Pelosi, I saw a speech of Pelosi, she thought she was Jesus or something. Come all, America is for everybody. Everyone should be an American. So it's this whole North American Union thing going on. But I mean, it's like they got you in this. They sprung the trap, and you've been in the trap for so long. I mean, they've been destabilizing Central America since 1980. For my first account experience, in which I suggest everyone, all the media is totally controlled and conforming to keep people in this matrix. That's the one thing. It's proven fact. It's out in the open. So the best knowledge and experience you can have is actually going out into your community and witnessing it. I did some of that when I was working in intensive in-home, and I went to this gigantic apartment building that was full of illegal immigrants receiving services as me, doing helping with child development. They were all receiving food stamps. They were all receiving subsidies. I've been in the food banks. Most of the food banks are all illegal immigrants, and this is intergenerational. Intergenerational. How did it ever come to this? So I think what's happening now is that they're springing all their traps, as you were saying, these false flags, and any way you look at it, there's just so much trouble. I absolutely do feel they're trying to create a civil war. They are rousing, rattling the I don't know what you want to call them, but I want my guns and I want America, I'm going to shoot me an immigrant, and hey, I mean, you've got on one side, you've got that real dense population that they're manipulating, and they're radicalizing, and they're also radicalizing this liberal Democrat, which is interesting, but is introducing this new fascist state. Would you imagine that? They've radicalized the liberals. We've got resources and we've got the best infrastructure. We need to help everybody, and they've got it so polarized.
Absolutely, it's the balkanization of the population. It's and that's why a lot of military people actually understand the program, is because that's what they do when they go to another country. They create sects. They make people identify with a particular group, and I think you're exactly right. You've got the Hispanics who, are coming from a destitute, war-ridden area. Nobody can blame them for wanting a better life, and nobody can blame them for wanting the handouts which are being, provided by the government. Okay, so why is the government providing handouts to them? It is to balkanize. It is to separate, because you also have another welfare class, minority blacks who are on welfare, maybe even minority whites who are looking at this situation from someone who is dependent intergenerationally. They're raised on it. They don't know any different, but they do think they're entitled to it. And then when someone who wasn't born here gets it without any of the legal processes that they're beholden to, then they get balkanized. They get balkanized against not only the people who say there should be no welfare state, but they get balkanized against the people who are now perceived to be taking, their fair share of the fruit. And then there's, people like me who think, a free society would provide for everybody, and if we didn't have a welfare state, actually counterintuitively we'd have less poor. Maybe not in the short term, but in the long term, if we were able to dismantle this massive corporate government and this basically octopus which sucks all of the cream of the crop and puts it into the military-industrial complex and spends it overseas. I mean, think of the irony of all the foreign aid and all the money that we send abroad. Not even
it's incredible. It's rich with irony. Yeah, all the foreign aid, all subsidizing these corporations. I mean, these banks, the bank bailout. 0% interest, the military industrial,
and they get caught. They get caught all the time, and then they pay, $200 million or even $2 billion, and it's just a cost of doing business for them.
Yeah, I think like 600 people got arrested from the Wall Street, opposed Wall Street, and like 1 or 2 bankers have been arrested. Yeah, it's rich in irony. It's satirical. It's insane. I mean, we can't even take care of everyone. There's no jobs. We don't even have a manufacturing base, so there's no hope. There's no future for these people. The only thing that keeps them alive is getting high, doing crime, going in and out of the prison system, and just sucking the nanny state off entitlement, and just using the boob tube to just keep themselves numb. So we're really just creating this generation of mutated people that are going to serve the prison system. I mean, I've been hearing stuff about FEMA camps. I tell you, I mean, FEMA camps are just around the corner. There's no doubt in my mind, because we can't even house our own homeless. And like I said, you have all these people on food stamps. Hey, there's been a cyber attack. We can't issue food stamps. I mean, they could reorganize. I forgot who was it? Was it Edward Bernays or Brzezinski had said, what in times of war they can sociologically restructure what it takes decades without any war. So we're being prepped. I would suggest people, have a few months of food and water. Be able to not leave your house.
Yeah, but Eric, if you do that, you might be put on the NDA terrorist list, because if you have more than, I think, a few weeks of food, then you're a terrorist.
That's true. But I'll tell you one thing. When they stop the food stamps, I don't want to leave my house. You're just going to have to wait for military law, military control, and then you're going to be in a whole new system, and you'll have your chip. That will track your biochemistry, your thoughts, your video record, and it'll be downloaded into AI to make sure you're complying. Yeah, we're moving into an incredible technocratic, scary world. I'm sorry for humanity. I feel bad for people around me. I feel I just feel bad about all of it. I wish there was more I could do. I wish I had the. I don't think anybody has the intellectual capability to actually eloquently, succinctly crystallize the problem and give the solution. We've been led down the gingerbread road, and now everyone's at the gingerbread house getting ready to be eaten by the witch. I don't know what else to tell you. You know, I mean, God save us.
Agreed. On that note, I think we can end tonight's broadcast. We appreciate you guys who listen in. Join us again. We're going to have another broadcast. We're always improving our system, and I'm working on a new broadcast system that's going to, you know, perhaps enhance our abilities to have a live broadcast. But also join us on bullcitybulletin.com as well as our Facebook page for more updates and real news for real people. Thanks for joining us.